Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Time for Indie Spotlight for the week of December 11th, 2024, winding down to the end of the year. Super small indie week last week. I'd say medium-sized indie week this week. I feel like we're actually talking about most of the important books that, or most of the books that I think people are interested in this week. But of course, I'll go over some other indie titles that are coming out this week as well that we don't get press previews for that you might want to be on the lookout for. But I thought it was a pretty strong week. We didn't have any distillery books last week. This week we have three very strong distillery books as well as some other titles, specifically one from Dark Horse that I think everybody should be picking up. But yeah, pretty great week. What did you think, Rocky?
Well, it's good. I never read all of them, but I've read I got a solid five of them this week. So and they were all good. So just another great week. Which is, we sound like a broken record. I mean, the indie market it's so great. There really is something to say about being unencumbered by the big two and continuity, where these writers can just show off their brilliance and let their own imaginations take us away. It's a really good week.
Yeah, so we'll kick it off with Brood number one. This is from the Minor Threats universe. I hope you guys all had a chance to listen to my episode that came out on Monday. It was an interview with Heath Corson, who is the writer of Brood, as well as Jordan Blum, who, along with Patton Oswalt, created the Minor Threats universe. And obviously, they're a part of the plotting for this story. This is who Heath Corson pitched the story to. Obviously, because they created the universe, they're going to have some input into the plotting of the story. But then Heath Corson is basically doing all the writing. Then Ian Colbert handles the artwork, and then Nate Picos is handling the lettering. So we're not on the Dark Horse press list for some reason. Don't even get me started on that. So I don't have exact. These are some files that he sent me before we had our conversation, but it gives you some idea, although it's not exactly the same type of press preview that we normally get, but it gives you some idea. You can see the fantastic art from Heath Corson. And if you've been reading the Minor Threats universe, and again, I encourage you to go listen to that conversation, because Jordan Blum does give kind of an overview of the universe. And it's very much like a superhero comic universe for veteran comic readers, because it leans into some of the tropes, but kind of moves beyond them, and it's also sort of metatextual. It's sort of aware of itself at times. But Brood, you can't help but think of Royal Tenenbaums, the Wes Anderson film. Heath Corson cited that as a big influence in this, because it's quirky characters, and it's a villainous family, if you will, just like the Tenenbaums are a quirky family in that film. Napoleon Archimedes, which I think is a fantastic arch villain name. He's got three.
Yeah,
he's got three offspring, and he hopes that his oldest will follow in his footsteps. His oldest is actually a cop. Doesn't want anything to do with the family in a lot of ways. Napoleon doesn't see his other two, his daughter and younger son, as being worthy, even though they're very skilled in their own right. So yeah, it's just a really quirky story, as you would expect something inspired by the Royal Tenenbaums to be, but it also has that same sort of tone that the rest of the Minor Threats universe has, where it's very self-aware, and it's fantastic writing. Heath was nice enough to send me the first three issues. I've gotten a chance to read the first three, and every one of them blew me away, and I cannot recommend this series highly enough. I cannot encourage you to go listen to my conversation with Heath and Jordan enough. This, to me, is just an absolute must-read. So I know you had a chance to check out the first issue, Rocky. What did you think?
Actually, it's funny. I've never watched the Royal Tenenbaums, so I don't understand that reference. But you know what I did think? I think of this is the comic book equivalent, the supervillain equivalent of Succession. I don't know if you saw the HBO show Succession.
I haven't, but I'm aware of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's just like Succession deals with a billionaire family
Yeah.
that is dysfunctional in its own way. And this very much is with Napoleon Archimedes. He himself he's a multi-billionaire himself. He's got a secret tech empire that he essentially built with his, while the larger world knew him as Napoleon Archimedes, he also had his own secret identity upon which he was building his own tech empire. And he's got 3 children, and he's got his own preference for which one of his children he'd like to take over the mantle. And he's got another daughter and another son. And it's its own eclectic. It's like I always say, I'm a family lawyer by profession, and I always say that every family learns to function in its own dysfunction, and that's just the way it is. And so, just when you think if you think your family's so good or so bad, chances are you're probably somewhere in the middle. We all function in dysfunction, and Napoleon Archimedes certainly has his. Idiosyncrasies, and Patton Oswalt does a really good job here of sort of pointing all that out.
Heath Corson is the writer.
Heath Corson, well, I apologize. Heath Corson does a very good job here, sort of establishing Napoleon Archimedes, giving his history, his dysfunctional relationship with his dad. It's very weird. It's almost as if his dad knew he was, maybe not was going to be a villain. His dad never really was not close to his dad. His dad didn't sort of resent him. There's one panel where there's a juxtaposition in 2 panels where his dad is slapping him, and then in the next panel it shows the Searcher, his arch nemesis Searcher, punching him, and there's a tragedy to it. He's got a dysfunctional relationship with his own parents, although his mother treated him better than his father, and he seems to have a loving wife, and yet he has this arch nemesis Searcher who, in a sad, tragic kind of way, it's his ongoing obsession with the Searcher and his life as a supervillain that ultimately has led him to what is likely going to be his own death, because he has a sort of I think it suggests that he's got a form of cancer as a result of his interactions with the Searcher, whose power set is radioactive in some way, and it's his connections with her that has led to his own more. He's coming face to face with his mortality. So here we have this supervillain who, by all accounts, he's got a loving wife. He's got 3 children. Talk about a wonderful problem to have. You're a multi-billionaire. You've got 3 children, and you're dealing with legacy issues and inheritances. And yet he still has those same sort of obsessions that he always had, because I guess maybe once a supervillain, always a supervillain. I'm still trying to get a handle on the character, but it's absolutely interesting. You said something when you introduced this, Jace, when you talked about this comic. You said this is like a comic book for people who are very accustomed to reading superhero comics. What I love about the way this is written and structured is that we sort of know all the tropes as a longtime comic book readers, and we're not spoon-fed anything in this story. We don't need to be. We can read between the lines. We can infer he was of a particular character. We know he's a bad guy. We know the ins and outs of that. We get a personal life. We get a day in the life of this supervillain and his family, and the struggles that these children would have with a supervillain father. And I think it works really well. And I'm very fortunate that when I go through previews months ago, I got every issue of the Minor Threats universe so far. I've got it all. I've not read all of them, but I've got them all. I'm happy to report. And it's a universe that I would encourage people to get into, because it's still so easy to get into the Minor Threats universe. I think the first series was 4 issues long. Maybe it was 6. The second one, I forget the name, is 4 issues long, and then there's the Brood, and then then there's Barfly. So it's still relatively early. You can still get the trades for all of them, and it's so well written, and and it's only expanding. I believe even isn't Gail Simone and a couple other writers are coming on board.
Yeah,
to expand on it. So,
we had the Minor Threats, and then the sequel All the Way Down, and then there was another one. Can't remember the name of it. There was 4 issues where they traveled to an alternate universe. And we have Barfly, which is ongoing right now. So those 4 are all 4 issues long, so that's 16, and
Yeah.
now you have this one supposed to be, I think, 4 or 6. So yeah, it's still relatively early, but don't wait too long to jump on
Yeah.
board. I'm pretty sure I haven't seen Succession, but I think Heath did mention that in our conversation as an influence as well. Also, the Gene Hackman version of Lex Luthor, right? Like, what if the Gene?
Yeah.
That's sort of where he started. What if the Gene Hackman version of Lex Luthor had kids? And then I think the Royal Tenenbaum stuff kind of came in a little bit later. But it's definitely that feel. The Searcher that Rocky mentioned, that's their Superman analog in this universe. So yeah, I echo Rocky's sentiments. Go and check out the Minor Threats universe. It's absolutely fantastic. If you haven't checked it out and you're not sure, well, am I a veteran comic reader? Am I going to get this? This is very new reader friendly. You can pick up Brood issue 1, and then if you like the sensibility of it, and you're curious about learning and seeing some other stories set in the Minor universe or Minor Threats universe, you can go then and seek out the other stuff if you want. You could definitely take that approach to it. So, all right. Up next, we have Minor Arcana. This is from writer Jeff Lemire, and Steve Wands handles the lettering. Pretty sure we've talked about every issue of it so far. But give us your thoughts on this. What are we up to? Issue number 4 now, Rob?
Yeah, issue number 4. This is about a lead character by the name of geez, I even have it written down here. I can't read my own writing. The lead character's name. Let me see here. Teresa.
Teresa, yeah.
Teresa returns to her old town of Limberlost that she grew up in. Her mother is essentially dying from cancer and isn't doing a very good job. Her mother still smokes and is still sort of hasn't really accepted the fact of she's got to have a more healthy lifestyle. But her mother owns and runs a sort of a psychic outlet, a psychic place, and Teresa wants to help her, basically wants to help her mother with the family business, so to speak, while her mother sort of heals and gets better. In the previous issues, Teresa gave a card reading to one of her schoolhood friends by the name of Kelly McCabe. And just for a quick reference, the title of the series, Minor Arcana, refers to the tarot cards. There's Major Arcana and there's Minor Arcana, and so it's just referring to the tarot card reading. And so basically, in this issue, Kelly goes back to Teresa and wants to have another reading because Kelly wants to know something about her. She wants to know what happened to her brother because Kelly's brother's been missing for a number of years. And what I really like about this is I grew up watching Mr. Dress-Up, which is a children's show with Casey and Finnegan, which were puppets on this children's show. And it looks like Jeff Lemire, who is Canadian, and Mr. Dress-Up is a Canadian show. He, instead of calling him Mr. Dress-Up, it's Mr. Marley. And in one of the readings here, Teresa has a vision of watching this old Mr. Marley show with his sidekick puppets, and one of the puppets is Jason, who is Kelly's brother, and they end up so. Teresa has this hallucination when she gives Kelly a card reading. She goes into a trance and has this hallucination, and ultimately has these visions, and then comes out of it and then takes Kelly to the old studio where this children's show was on. And this Mr. Marley was in fact related to Kelly. And even though, and when they go through the studio, Kelly finds the puppet of Jason, Kelly feels that her brother's still alive because of it. And Teresa doesn't really feel that she's accomplished anything for Kelly, but it made Kelly feel good. It gave Kelly hope that her brother, who was a drug user, is still alive. And I think Teresa, who herself is very screwed up and feels like Teresa herself, it was established in the first issue, feels directionless. She doesn't know. She's jobless, directionless. She feels like she's going nowhere in life. She doesn't have a healthy self-image of her own self. She's very insecure and she's directionless. And I think it was what Jeff Lemire has done so well is the fact that Teresa, who's directionless in her own life, can provide so much hope for people just by giving a tarot card reading. A tarot card reading is something that Teresa never really took seriously. It was something her mother did. But Teresa was there. Jeff Lemire does a good job of showing just how Teresa's almost off-put by the fact that she's given this tarot card reading and it can provide so much hope. And she's not even trying to do so. She doesn't want to give people false hope, but yet she's given people real hope with the readings. But she's also having these hallucinations that she can't explain, these trances that she can't explain. And it works really well. And you can already see in this fourth issue, once again, a very strong character-driven issue that, despite the fact that Teresa herself is a character that's going through something herself, trying to come to terms with her own past and trying to find her own place in life, while caring for her dying mother, giving these tarot card readings, she's slowly finding herself embroiled in a mystery as to why she's having these trances, what's the origins of them, and ultimately how is this related to the vision she's having with her own grandfather and her own family history. It's very well done. It's only at the fourth issue. You can tell this is going to be a series that's going to be a slow burn, probably a lot like Sweet Tooth, another great series by Jeff Lemire, that also has a series on TV. I forget which TV streaming unit has it. Maybe it's on Amazon, but in any event, very well done, and just another great issue. Did you happen to get a chance to read this?
Yeah, I think Sweet Tooth is on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe Disney Plus, but I think it's Netflix. But yeah, I did have a chance to read this. You're right about it being a slow burn. You're right about it being very much a character study. Jeff Lemire, to me, as a creator, is so fascinating because he can write superhero stuff so well. As evidenced by his run on Bloodshot, or look at his JSA stuff he's doing right now. You can look at his Black Hammer universe, that's sort of his own interconnected superhero universe over at Dark Horse, and all that stuff is fantastic. But I think he's at his best when he is just doing character work and when he's illustrating his own ideas. Teresa is such a flawed character, as is her mother. We can understand why Teresa has the cynical outlook that she does on life based on the things that she's gone through. She struggles with addiction herself. Mom obviously is a functioning alcoholic and, like I said, still smoking even though she has cancer. Teresa comes back home. She's been sober for a little while. She falls off the wagon. She goes to her ex-girlfriend's house, who's now married with a kid. She's banging on the door at 3 a.m, drunk. So yeah, it's a very lived-in story, if you know what I mean. It's very, very realistic characters. And then when you add in this supernatural flair of the Arcana and the tarot card readings and the visions that Teresa's having and the connection to her grandfather, you end up with something that's greater than the sum of the parts. So really impressed with the work that Jeff Lemire is doing in Minor Arcana. So yeah, definitely recommend checking it out. All right, up next we have Skin Police. This is up to issue number 3, written by Jordan Thomas. We have art by Daniel Gattei, colors by Jason Wordy, letters by Jeff Powell. You can see here kind of the conceit of the story. So there's a fertility panic that grips the globe, and because of that, people aren't able to have kids, so they illegally turn to genetic manipulation. They have clones made, take some of their DNA, take some of their partner's DNA, and these clones are made. The problem is 3 out of every 4 clones, they do what's called pop, where they become these homicidal maniacs that are having hallucinations. And like we saw in the first issue, one guy had this hallucination. He was on a plane, and he was a clone, and he popped, and he saw everybody on the plane as like a demon, monster, whatever. So he started killing people, ripping people's throats out, and going crazy, what have you. So this is a worldwide problem, specifically in the UK, the United Nations of Europe. They've created this task force called the Duplicate Identification and Capture Division, or the Skin Police is what everybody else calls them. And it's their job to go out and basically eliminate these clones before they become a problem, before they pop. But it's like, in a way, it's McCarthyism, right? Like, all it takes is the suspicion, because there's not really a test, or there is a test to find out, but would you really want to know? Would you want to know if one of your own kids is a dupe, or your own relative or friend or what have you? Like, and obviously the parents are hoping that their kid is the, 1 in 4 that doesn't pop, and they can live a normal life or what have you. But if you don't like somebody, you just call the skin police on them. So there's this whole big brother, non sort of trustworthy, and this whole social aspect to it, as well as the fact that some people feel that the rights are being denied, again, because it's the have and have nots. You can have the test done. We found out last issue there's actually a medication that you can take. So there's a couple different underground organizations for these dupes, and one of them goes out and tries to find dupes when they're about to pop. They start showing these symptoms. They basically put them in a padded cell so they can't harm anybody or themselves. And then they give them this medication after they've popped that allows them to just function. They can keep living normal lives. So, this is the answer. This is what you can do. And then you don't have to worry about basically the extinction of the human race because nobody can get pregnant anymore. That's not really being talked about. So you have that sort of aspect of the story that's being told, as well as this agent of the skin police, this X character that you can see here. And he's sort of their like number one skin police agent or officer that goes out and is very successful at taking out dupes. What's interesting, after a dupe pops too, you'll notice their eyes are all black. That's how you know they've popped. And so in this particular issue, some of the dupe underground go to try to kidnap a skin police agent who's been in a coma for a number of weeks. And when X confronts that, it's X's former partner that's in this coma. And when he confronts one of the agents that is there, or one of the dupes that's there trying to kidnap her, you can see that he sees, oh, look, it's a dupe. But how is a pop dupe leading a kill squad, right? Because if they pop, they're crazy, they're nuts, they like can't. And so maybe could he possibly be thinking about changing sides once he finds out that there's a way around it? They all have to be killed, basically, executed, or what have you. So there's been a lot of action, and it's been a lot of these sort of philosophical questions, what it means to have identity and self-identity and that sort of thing. This was the first issue because we get a lot of the underground and what's possible and how there are other solutions, and these different underground organizations, they have different means. Some are more radical than others. This is the first issue where it really started leaning into that political side of it, and what it means for society and what have you. So I'm just really impressed with this series. It comes out from Oni. I don't hear enough people talking about it in my mind because I think it's just a fantastic series. So if you're so inclined, I definitely recommend picking it up. I don't think any of the issues have sold out. You probably can go and find the first couple issues and pick those up if you like. I just think it's a really fascinating story. Set in Europe, it definitely has kind of a European comics feel. And I would definitely recommend checking it out. So. Did you get a chance to read it, Rocky? Anything to add?
I don't have anything to add. I'm looking forward to reading it after hearing your review, but no, I've never had an opportunity.
Gotcha. All right. Well, up next we have Doll Parts. This is a debut issue from Luana Vecchio, who I think it was Lovesick. I think that was the name of the series that she did previously that we covered on the show. And this is set in that same world. It's out there. That Lovesick. I didn't read this, but the Lovesick story was kind of way out there. But she does it all. Writes it, draws it, letters it, and I know you checked it out. So what are your thoughts on it?
I got to tell you, I really like this Doll Parts. This was I read Lovesick, but I got to tell you, Lovesick by Luana Vecchio's Lovesick series is very, very sensual. It's very violent. It's sexual. It's violent. It's sex and violence. It's provocative. It's erotic. It's dark. It's disturbing. It's very graphic at times, and the lead character Madeline, it's an adult Madeline in the main Lovesick series, and she is she's a very she's a girl who's very independent with her own sense of justice, that she really doles out justice, and she's got a particular viewpoint towards sexuality and to men, and she has her own sense of justice. And what I it's too much to go into to talk about Lovesick. Suffice to say, Doll Parts I actually enjoyed more. Doll Parts is the origin of Madeline, and it's very, very well done. First of all, the art is absolutely fantastic. The cover, I love the cover, and it's for those watching on your YouTube channel. I mean, the cover is just fantastic. It's a young 12-year-old Madeline surrounded by bunch of basically pink teddy bears, and this story of a young Madeline. She's a young ballet dancer. She's learning ballet, and you learn just how dysfunctional her life is. She's got she doesn't like her mother. Her mother is kind of cruel. Her dad is not particular. Her dad seems to be indifferent to her feelings. Her mother is unlikable, opinionated. And young Madeline is what Luana Vecchio does so well. She seems to really get into the heads and the characters of these young girls in this ballet class, who are, so many of them are obsessed with being skinny, of the pressure of being the best, the pressure of looking the best. And there's different age groups. So you've got teenage girls with the preteen girls learning ballet, and the older teen girls. And the subject matter is very brutal here. It's that Madeline is a character who, as she doesn't really want to be a ballet dancer. She just wants to be a kid and enjoy her life. But yet she's got a mother who's pressuring her to stay in ballet. Her mother, she's good. Her best friend is a character by the name of Daisy. Madeline loves Daisy's mom, but Daisy's mom is a big-breasted woman, and because she's big-breasted and attracts male attention, young Madeline, her mother hates her. And in the midst of all this, frankly terrible parenting, and young Madeline is just sort of trying to enjoy her life as a young girl. There's also, we have a stalker. We've got a pedophile in the neighborhood that Madeline happens to come across. And again, this is a graphic book. Do not let the fact that I just said this is about 12-year-old ballet girl, you don't want to give this to a young reader. I don't think any parent would want to give this to their 12 or 14-year-old to read. This is an adult tale. Lovesick is a very graphically adult tale. This is a comic that establishes you can read this blind. You don't need to know anything about Lovesick. That's how good this is. This is about how the formative years of a young girl who learned to be fiercely independent because she couldn't rely on her father. She couldn't rely on her mother. Completely undependable. Her mother is too narcissistic and grounded in her own mind. Her father's too indifferent. A young girl at 12 years old who manages to by fate, managing to escape the fate of being killed by a pedophile, and essentially learning. You can see how she learns to hate her mother. And it's so tragic, and yet it resonates. It's so powerful what Vecchio has managed to do in this 52-page story. And the price point's fantastic. Bang for your buck. Great story. Fantastic characterizations. You get to know not only Madeline, the lead character, but her friend Daisy, and you see the pressures of all the young girls, and you see this young town struggle with the fact that there's a pedophile in their midst, and the fact ultimately when it's revealed that when this predator is caught, it's found that he's actually not caught. There's still someone dangerous still out there, and young Madeline has to keep so much inside, but you can see how she learns how she becomes the real badass, fiercely independent woman in Lovesick. You can really, really see it here. And if you've, in fact, I gotta say, I like this better than the Lovesick series. I think Lovesick was almost a little bit too graphic and too violent, quite frankly. But this I have a better appreciation for Lovesick now because I see how it began, and it makes sense. It makes sense. She becomes this young sexually, the hints of the sexual violence and the provocativeness and the hints of what's to come in her life are laid out throughout this. Even with her mother holding a cross, showing religious influence, and that disturbing intersection between religious overtones and religious fundamentalism and disturbing sexual imagery. It's all there, and it's those Easter eggs for what those of us who've read the Lovesick series knows that you get a lot more of if you read that series. But anyways, very, very well done. It gets, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still thinking about this. This is one of those ones where I did read this. I read it twice, and then I happened to be able to read it a third time, earlier today. And just very well done. High recommend for me. And, definitely, it's going to be, I'm not sure what my pick's going to be this week, but that's tough choices this week. But I really enjoyed this. Did you said you never had a chance to read it?
No, I read Lovesick, and I just thought it was so out there. So I saw this, and I didn't even open it. I was like, no, I'm just not. I have to be in, a certain mood to go back and revisit that. But yeah, I mean, having heard you talk about it, it's in a way it's a little more tame, less violence, less.
Yeah, it is. It's more character driven. I find it.
Yeah,
It's more.
yeah,
It's a little bit more grounded.
yeah. It doesn't feel not that Lovesick felt exploitive, but it's a lot, and this is kind of leads into that. So yeah, I might check it out at some point. I have to wait and see. All right. Well, moving on from that, next book we have to talk about is Through the Boughs. This is the first distillery book to talk about. It is the Distillery Holiday Special. I think it was months ago now, at least 6 weeks. I had the two editors of this book come on the show to talk about it. I think they're credited in here. Co-editors Sean Edgar and Bryce Gold. You can see all the credits here. We have 7 stories. Patrick McHale and J.K. handle the writing on the first one. Jim Campbell on art. Sweeney Boo, writer and artist on the second story with Clayton Cowell on letters. James Tynan with Crumbs, a very bad elf story, with Jensen Ekwall on art and Aditya Bidikar on letters. And we have Molly Mendoza, writer-artist on Soul Saunter with Clayton Cowell on letters. Ryan Andrews does everything for The Goat King's Son, written art and letters. And then Pulsar, same thing, by Kay Roten, writer, artist, letterer. And then We'll Be Home by Grim Wilkins, writer, artist, letterer. So I hope you guys all had a chance to hear that interview. And if you did, one of the things that Bryce and Sean stressed was how this, yes, it's a holiday story, but I love the fact they don't call it a Christmas special, it's a Yuletide special. And much like what we were talking about last week with some of the stories that were told where these aren't Christmas stories, they're winter solstice stories, or they're Yuletide stories, because they lean into ideas that go back earlier than Christmas, earlier than Christianity, going back to the earliest days of the winter solstice, which is the shortest day of the year, which means you have a really long night, which leads to ghost stories and that sort of thing. But also the idea of the pagan holiday that Christmas kind of had its roots in. So these were a lot of fun. The first one stars a couple of goblin kids who goblin kids are notoriously not good, so they get coal in their stocking, but for a goblin, coal's actually good because they're very poor and they don't have any fuel to heat up their cauldron, so they can boil rats and bats and have a holiday feast. And so they get coal and hey, that's great. Now we can have a holiday feast. So that was a really fun story. The Sweeney Boo story, the Yule Beast, felt a little incomplete to me. But gorgeous art to look at, but it definitely feels like it could be a story that she builds on in in a future holiday special. The Crumbs, the Evil Elf, was a lot of fun from Jamestown. I especially like the art, how it's almost prose style, and just really cool art. So that one was a lot of fun. The Soul Saunter, almost the one that's most sort of bright and happy in a way, because yeah, it's winter solstice, but it's a story about kind of astrological signs, astrological beings, and Leo, who's sort of associated with the sun, and summer doesn't want to let go for the winter solstice to happen. So that one's kind of fun, kind of wild and out there. The Goat King's Son, very much leaning into the myths of kingdoms and holiday cheer and bringing gifts and what have you, and just gore, especially not just the line work, but especially the colors, as you can see in this one, just very brightly colored. Again, a really fun story. This next one, Pulsar, was kind of, I don't want to say hard to understand, but it's very filled with symbology, and the idea of it's in the future, but it's so far into the future that it feels like it's they've forgotten a lot of modern things and swung back over to myth sort of thing. So that one was kind of really out there. So I don't know. That might be one that I have to read again to really have an understanding of it. This Will Be Home one by Grim Wilkins, the final story. I really enjoy the art. There's very little dialogue. Well, actually, there's no dialogue. It's just the words that are kind of almost incorporated into the art, with, again, this idea of family and ancient roots of the winter solstice and what have you. Gorgeous art, just a lot of fun. So it's, as much as I want to say these stories are instant holiday classics, I think the strength of this book is really the art. The visuals of it is why you're going to pick this up. So if you're in your comic shop and they have one on the shelf, I definitely would encourage you to pick it up and flip through it. We know these distillery books are all oversized. There's a reason for that. The art really shines through. They really celebrate sort of the visual aspect of comics, and how in a lot of ways it's the visual storytelling of comics that's going to draw you in. And that's why I tell everybody, if you think you might like this, pick it up, flip through it. They're interesting stories. It's not the same old kind of Rudolph and Frosty juvenile stories where you're not going to remember them. They're stories that have a little more heft to them. So definitely recommend checking it out. Okay, up next we have the the 6th issue of Witchblade, written by Marguerite Bennett, line art by Giuseppe Cafaro, colors by Arif Prianto, letters by Troy Petrie. Sarah Pazzini is starting to get some answers about why she has the Witchblade, why she was chosen, starting to get one step closer to solving the mystery of how her father was killed. From her father's old partner, she gets a sickle key, and we find out that it's going to unlock sort of the secret hideout, I guess you would say, of her father. And it's really interesting. What we find out here is that only somebody who is of the same blood of her father is going to be able to use the key. So basically, she has to use the key on a locked door, which there's only one locked door in her house. And so when she goes to her front door of her apartment, she locks it, then she sticks the key in and turns it, and when she opens the door, instead of the hallway being there, it's actually opened the door to her father's study, the secret headquarters here, where he was researching and doing detective work on these corrupt cops from the NYPD, and she's going to pick up where he left off. But come to find out, the forces of evil who are out to capture the Witchblade knew that Sarah was the only one that was going to be able to use that sickle key, and so they manipulated events so that her father's old partner would give Sarah the key. So they're hoping to access all that information and destroy it, so that the corrupt cops on the NYPD, who clearly are in league with this evil cult, if you will, won't be messed with and can continue doing whatever they want to do. And they come to find out, they have infected the partner, and they're sort of riding along. He's like a carrier for them. And once she opens the door, they all attack. She, of course, manifests the Witchblade, locks the door, and then tells Ian Nottingham, who's been sort of trying to play both sides. We know he works for Kenneth Irons, who in the classic Witchblade stories is the big bad. Seems like he's going to play the same role here. Ian is sort of works for him, but sort of has his own designs on what he can do to gain power, and he's been sort of manipulating Sarah. And so at the end here, she tells him, "You're going to take me to see Kenneth Irons." She has a feeling he's got something to do. So, I've talked before about how much this version of Witchblade feels familiar, but yet Marguerite Bennett is able to add enough twists and enough kind of new ideas and tweak the characters just enough that even if you've read that classic stuff fast, there's a lot of value and entertainment in reading this version of it. So I do recommend it. The art from Giuseppe Cafaro, I think, is just absolutely fantastic. So if you're so inclined, definitely think you guys should all check it out. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next book list. And this is from Boom Studios, In Bloom, from writer Michael W. Conrad, art by John J. Pearson, with an art assist by Lola Bonato, and it's lettered by Pat Broso. So I know this one was on your list, Rocky. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, I got to give, it's not too, this is probably the highest compliment I can give to Michael W. Conrad. I wasn't a huge fan of Michael W. Conrad's collaboration with him and Becky Cloonan on his run on Wonder Woman. And I think he's had sort of he never quite found his place as a writer, both as a writer or even part-time writer with DC Comics, but I think he's found his footing here with this Boom Studios In Bloom. This was a interesting concept for a story, and John J. Pearson's art in conjunction with Lola Bonato was actually very, very well. I love the concept, the whole idea of being that in bloom, referring to it's one of the this is a world where it's built on the idea that all the fungus and bacteria that we have in our bodies, that in fact, our life is, we're not necessarily the dominant life form, that in fact, plant life is a central part of who we are. And the humanity in this story, there's bloomers and literally random human beings can just suddenly bloom. They can start growing a flower out of your eyeball or flower out of your nose and your ear, and that's considered a good thing because you're in bloom, hence the title, hence the series itself. But there's some disturbing elements to this new world, because while everyone, it's very common for like it starts off with showing a kid, kids playing basketball, and a man in a fedora hands them the basketball, and one of the kids says, "Look, he's bloomed," and it looks like he's got. I mean, it seems to be accepted by humanity that different people will bloom, but yet visually reading the story, to me, it looks horrific. I mean, these don't look like pleasant people. I mean, there's one character. This involves a murder. There are people that are getting murdered, and there's a detective team, and one of the detectives has a flower growing out the side of her head, so she looks kind of attractive. So I guess if you got a little bit of flower growing out of the side of your ear, depending on how it blooms, yeah, it can look good. But at other aspects of it, there's a horror element to this, almost like Swamp Thing-like horror to it, and yet there is undoubtedly a beauty to it, depending on how you bloom. Let's face it. You've got flowers, but you also have weeds, and so it's the luck of the draw. If you're going to bloom, how are you going to bloom, and what's the consequence of it? There's deeper, disturbing elements to this storyline about how this blooming occurs. There's something called an upcycler, and how they deal with their elderly is very disturbing. If you're if you're a senior or you're a grandmother and you haven't bloomed yet, you can donate your grandmother, or if you're an old person, seniors can essentially be like recycled and an upcycle. Like you can donate your body while you're still alive to the process of being upcycled, which I think is contributes to the blooming process. I think it's only hinted at, but this. I want to give credit here to Michael W. Conrad in scripting a tale, and John J. Pearson's art along with Lola Bonero's, where there's almost like a Twilight Zone element to it, because I'm not sure it's a disturbing world. It's disturbing. It's got beauty. It's got horror. It's got people that very much want to bloom and others that want to avoid it like the plague, as you can imagine. It's sort of like, I think of almost like it was during COVID. There was some of us that embraced the masks. Others were viscerally against it. It divided our society. And it's not something that we look back on with it wasn't a great time for it. And yet I look at this, and this is a world that's literally in bloom, but you got all aspects of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and everything in between, and how it's affecting society and affecting our outlook on each other and humanity, and what's our purpose, and what is life, and all these other. So it's rife with all kinds of metaphor and what is the central mystery? I'm not sure, but but it's good setup. And I don't know where this is going to go, and I like that. And Michael W. Conrad, I think I get a sense he's finally found a story that he's very much in control of. And I'm going to give him a lot of slack, because I've been pretty hard on him in the past, quite frankly. And I know I've also reviewed some of his Exo Man of War. He did some of that with Becky Cloonan for Valiant Comics, which I didn't mind that work so much. But this is by far, this is the best he's done so far. And I'm really intrigued by this series, and this is one that I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on, because and you're showing up on the screen there that final image of what happens to the elderly when they're upcycled, and it's absolutely horrific. So it really makes me wonder, what kind of world has Michael W. Conrad introduced us to? And thank God for the visuals that really drive it home. So, have you managed to read this?
No, I don't know that I have interest in it. I mean, it sounds pretty weird and out there, which makes sense, Michael W. Conrad. But yeah, you're upcycled, you're like disintegrated. Reminds me a little bit of Soylent Green, right? Soylent Green is people. It's people. They're recycling these people to be, or in the Matrix, right? When they talk about the very first Matrix, they're like, when you've seen the dead liquefied to be fed intravenously to the living, like, ugh. But, that's life. That's the cycle of life, right? The circle of life. Like, plants die, trees die. In the forest, they decompose, they become part of the soil, and then they're used as nutrients for, and they nourish the plants that then grow up in place of them. But pretty cynical, pretty horrific in a lot of ways. So I don't know if it's my particular cup of tea. But speaking of horrific, next up we have, also from Distillery, Warm Fusion, which is written by Scott Hoffman. We have art by Alberto Ponticelli, Lee Luffridge on colors, Steve Wands on letters. For lack of a better way to describe this is like a sort of dystopian future. Like this is very Blade Runner. And what you have is basically some sort of natural catastrophe or environmental catastrophe that's happened. It's not explained in detail, but what I do know, and what is shown here, is there are a lot of people that are born with kind of birth defects. They're born and they're missing both their legs, or they're missing an arm and a leg, or both arms, or what have you. And so a lot of people have prosthetics, and there's also kind of a underground industry, if you will, for people to have intimate relations with these people that don't have all their limbs. Apparently, it's very easy to have intimate relations in this world, right? Like it's almost like a VR type thing where anybody can have sex with anybody. That's sort of normal. And so it's sort of taboo to have like actual intimate contact with somebody, and a lot of people want to. It feels more intense with these people that don't have you. It's not exactly explained. But what apparently is happening is somebody's going out and they're murdering a lot of these sex workers that are, for lack of a better term, missing limbs. And in the backdrop of that, you have this Prophetic Solutions, which is headquartered in New Jersey, who's trying to get approvals and promotion from various cities, endorsement from various cities or what have you, because they're working on new technology where it sort of looks like it's more human-looking prosthetics rather than looking robotic. It almost looks like they're regrowing their limbs. But it's clear that the lead scientist, who is the son of the owner and CEO and founder of the company, he's got some issues. He's got some really strange guy that he's this guy here that he's working with, and I don't know if those are like tentacles growing out of his face or it's just a mask or what have you. But it's clear that this guy's got the son, this chief scientist, has his own fetishes or what have you. And he is injecting people with the compounds, whatever. And it seems like he's partly doing it to experiment because, it's not all approved to be used on humans yet, but he wants to see what's going to happen or what have you. And he's partly doing it for like his own sort of sexual desires, maybe. And so it's this really weird out there story with gorgeous art. It's very dark. It's very post-apocalyptic. And it's... Yeah. In a way, I don't know what it is about this week where we have all these books with like these sexual overtones or what have you, and pedophiles and sexual crimes and what have you. But it is what it is. This is definitely for mature readers. And we do have this detective who's trying to get to the bottom of it because these sex workers are turning up dead, time and time again. And when the scientist assistant starts asking questions, and she's like, have you been injecting people or what have you? He knows that she's getting suspicious, and so then he sort of flirts with her and convinces her to come back to his apartment with him, and then he chains her up, and before we know it, that real creepy guy with the tentacle faces. You can see it here. He's showing up, and she's like, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm going to inject you, and then you'll dream, and the dream will set you free. And, super creepy. In a way, I think it's those injections that he's injecting into people, and those are the people that are going out and killing people and what have you. So, yeah, I definitely get, for some reason, a real Blade Runner vibe from this, although it's not exactly the same. This is more... to do with kind of genetics rather than and kind of mutating people rather than clones, but just based on the level of technology and that it's in this like dark dystopian future, that's sort of the vibe that I'm getting. So if you're so inclined, I think it's worth a read. Again, it's a book that I would say if you're at your local comic shop, they have a copy on the shelf, go ahead and pick it up and flip through it. Just like I said about the Through the Boughs Yuletide special. This one's very much driven by the visuals, as is the last book I'm going to talk about, which is also from Distillery, which also has some very fantastic art. So, last book I'm going to talk about is called The City Beneath Her Feet. This is from writer James Tynion, Elsa Charretier on art, Jordi Belair on colors, Aditya Bidikar on letters. This is just a fascinating story. But again, what puts it over the top for me is the artwork by Elsa Charretier. Like, look at that train as it's driving by our narrator here, right? You notice that the kind of the little smoke trailing out of the back of it says Rumble, very Eisner-esque, Will Eisner-esque.
Yeah.
And just fantastic. And Chartier has very clean lines. Her work on Love Everlasting with Tom King is very interesting. And her art, to me, it evokes this almost like mod, like 1960s mod era, which is really interesting to me. So I don't know that it's specifically called out that this is New York City, that's the city, if you will, but it's New York City, and it's fantastic. And the first chapter here, the girl in the leopard print jacket. This is the girl in the leopard print jacket, and she's awesome and bright and funny and cute, and she's an assassin. She's a hitwoman. She has a handler who's very badass and awesome. And the narrator basically runs into her at a bar after she has completed one of her jobs and been injured, and they end up going back to her, to the girl in the leopard print jacket. They end up going back to her house or her apartment, which has this, gorgeous view of the city. She obviously makes a lot of money killing people. And it basically tells the story of their, mutual attraction and what have you. But it's the girl in the leopard print jacket. She's a hitwoman. She can't exactly have, a normal life or normal relationships or what have you. And so she dips in and out of this narrator's life. And this narrator has aspirations of being a writer. And when we meet her, she's going back and telling the story of what's happened over her time knowing this person, this girl in the leopard print jacket. And the first time that they meet, the narrator she has this book deal, and she kind of has writer's block. She doesn't even know what she's going to write about. So she meets this girl in the leopard print jacket, and has various encounters. The girl in the leopard print jacket will show up at her apartment at various times. Maybe a year goes by, she pops back up, they have a relationship, whatever. The narrator wants more. She's very much in love with this woman, but she also, this is her idea for a book. She writes like a fictionalized version of her relationship with this girl in the leopard print jacket. And the girl in the leopard print jacket knows about it, and she doesn't exactly give her blessing, but because it's fictionalized, it's okay and what have you. And it goes through, and we see that the narrator, as I said, wants more, and the girl in the leopard print jacket, her lifestyle and her chosen profession doesn't allow for more or what have you. But at the end, the narrator says, yeah, this is I've told you this part, and that's interesting, but it's not really the story I'm going to tell. Really, the story I'm going to tell you is the story of after the girl in the leopard print jacket was killed in the course of her occupation, and she leaves her entire fortune and her apartment to me. That's when things really go crazy. And so it's a great hook at the end of the issue from James Tynion, to get you to come back, if the amazing art from Elsa Charretier wasn't enough. Which for me, I just love this art. It is so fantastic. Yeah. Now, don't get me wrong. I have very much enjoyed Love Everlasting from Tom King with Elsa's art, but it didn't hook me the way that this did. For some reason, this art with this story, and maybe it's just I've been watching. I don't watch much TV, as longtime listeners of the podcast will know, because I'm too busy reading comics. But I have been watching Day of the Jackal on Peacock, and it's been
that's good.
It's been excellent, to the point where it's a UK show, and it comes out a week ahead of time in the UK, and I'm a week ahead because my son has been getting me the UK episodes to watch. So right. I've already the episode that comes out this Thursday in the US I've already seen, and it's the final issue.
Don't spoil it.
No, I won't. But the final episode comes out in the UK this coming Thursday. I'm gonna have to get him to send me the link to that as well, so I can watch. Because the last one was so good. But so I don't know if that's what has fed into this. The main character in Day of the Jackal is a assassin as well, just like the girl in the leopard print jacket. So it's been on my mind lately. And so, but for whatever reason, this story just really spoke to me. I think the art is fantastic. The story is interesting. And the fact that it's James Tynion. Now, Tynion started out his comic book career very successfully doing superhero books for DC. And then finally when he took a little bit of a risk. I mean, he finally built up to the point where he was on Batman, and he was on Batman when his exclusive contract with DC ran out. And he had the opportunity to re-up, to sign another exclusive contract with DC, and chose not to. Chose to branch out on his own. And he'd had some success. Something, Is Killing the Children had come out, and it was doing okay. It was still growing. It hadn't yet become what it has become since. So I say all that to say it was a bit of a risk for him to go out on and say, I'm going to tell the stories I want to tell. And a lot of that leaned into horror. This is not horror. this is not superheroes. This is something else. A little bit of romance, with the intimate relations and sort of this longing that the narrator has for the Hitwoman or what have you. A little bit of slice of life, a little bit of crime, perhaps. There's more of that to come with what the narrator hints at. But this is something so completely different from anything that I've read from Tynion before, and certainly shows the level of talent that he has, that he can do something completely different, completely out there, that is perfectly suited. He picked the perfect artist to team up with on this story, and I did not expect, just from looking at the cover and from knowing what I knew about the story, for this to just blow me away the way that it did. But it gets my highest recommendation. It is so fantastic. Again, it just evokes that sort of 60s mod feel, interesting characters, really smart dialogue, well paced. I just loved it. I thought it was just so fantastic. So if you're so inclined, you can check that out. Again, another one of those books from Distillery, so it's oversized. It's out there on your comic book shelf while you're at the shop this week. Yeah, just give it a flip through, see if it looks like it might be up your alley. Because again, I think it's very much worth your time to check it out. So
yeah, I got this on my pull list. I never read it yet, but it's on my pull list. It's waiting for me at the comic shop. I'll be picking it up this week. I love. I always say her name wrong, the artist, because I love Chartier. Yeah, she actually does a series of videos on YouTube where she talks about her process and her art, and she's amazing. She's quite a good teacher. I'm not an artist, but she's very, very good artist. She knows what she's doing. I love the cover too that you've shown, and the variant covers for the series are quite good as well.
Yeah, and I'll put it back up so everybody can see it. This is my pick of the week. No, there was no question about it. I mean, there was a lot of good books this week. I thought all three Distillery books are really good. Brood was probably the closest I came to picking something else, because it's really fantastic. But at the end of the day, Brood is like I said, it's a superhero story for veterans of superhero comics. And as much as I love superhero comics, I've read a ton of them. And don't get me wrong, Brood is a fantastic superhero comic. But this, City Beneath Her Feet, just felt so different and so fresh. And I thought the art, like I said, just perfectly suited the story that's being told. And this could have been a standalone, even with the hook at the end. And I still would be recommending it. Or the ending could have been a little bit different, to where it didn't seem like it was going to continue. And again, I'd still be recommending it. Just the perfect melding of the aesthetic of the story with the aesthetic of the art. Just loved it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I got to say that City Beneath Her Feet. I just want to say that looks like a Darwin Cook smile.
Yeah,
she's channeling her inner Darwin Cook with that. I absolutely love it. But
Elsa's art.
Frontier,
Elsa Chartier's art. It does have that sort of clean line feel that Darwin had as well. So yeah, that's a good comparison.
Yeah, but my pick of the week, I loved In Bloom, I love Brood, but I'm going to go with Doll Parts by Luena Vecchio. I think it's very well done. I think it provides, especially if you're a fan of the Lovesick series, or the Lovesick miniseries. This is a standalone. This is just a great snapshot of a young preteen girl, and you can understand how dysfunctional a life can become, just based on a series of well-intentioned actions, but ultimately can lead to just how easy it is to screw up young minds if we're not careful, and just how fragile we all are. And despite the best of intentions, we all want what's best, and we all want to be independent. But you know what? It's always sad when children have to grow up too soon, and when preteens have to become adults and have to take on responsibilities that they shouldn't have to be if parents are doing their job right. And there's a tragedy to this tale that I think just speaks volumes for so many lives. Not that, I mean, this deals with some pretty serious adult content and a stalker liquor and some very disturbing sexual content. This isn't for young readers by any means, but I think it is a 52-page story that is, I think, satisfying and has something to say. And I would recommend people pick it up, because I strongly suspect if people pick this up, they might be inclined to check out Lovesick.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if that's the case. So, all right, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. I'm still waiting to hear back from Cliff Woodbury. Cliff Woodbury, 5319, you won the free month of Global Comics for last week. That we announced on last week's episode. So again, just hit me up on any of the social medias or send me an email, comicsourceblog@gmail.com, to get your code for a free month of Global Comics, which is the premier place to go and get comics. A lot of the books that we're talking about here, a lot of the Mad Cave books, they're all going to be available or already are available on Global Comics. And then for last week's episode, the person who left a comment who wins this week's code is Magnox, Magnox. So again, shoot me a note on social media or reach out through email so I can get you your code. Don't forget, 12 Days of the Comic Source coming up very, very soon, starting on Saturday with an interview with Jeremy Adams. If you're looking for our thoughts on the DC books this week, head over to Rocky's channel over on YouTube, Comic Space Boom, ! Where we do our DC Spotlight every week. When you're there, leave comments, like, subscribe. You know what to do. We love to get conversations going in the comment section. Conversely, you can check out the Comic Source on your favorite podcast platform or app if you prefer to listen while you're driving or exercising or on the subway or what have you. And you can go back and listen to thousands and thousands of previous episodes from the Comic Source. And obviously, if you're listening to the Comic Source audio-only feed right now and you'd like to check us out so you can see the fantastic art we've been talking about for this particular week for the Indie Spotlight, just head over to YouTube, do a search for the Comic Source, and subscribe. It's been almost a year that we've started releasing all the content for the Comic Source on YouTube as well as the audio feed. And it's been an interesting year, I'll say that. The number of audio downloads have gone down, but at a smaller rate than the number of video views have gone up, if that makes sense. So anyway, we appreciate the support, as always, everybody. Appreciate you taking some time out of the holiday season to join us. We hope you enjoyed it. Get out there to your local comic shop, pick up some books for yourself this week, as well as some fantastic Christmas presents for some others. One quick thing before we sign off, I do want to mention there's a few other independent books that are out this week that you might want to check out. Transformers from Skybound is up to issue number 15. Conan the Barbarian number 17 is out this week. Space Ghost number 8, which has been a runaway hit. David Peppo's writing. Also, The Terminator from Dynamite has been a very successful book. That's up to issue number 3. Kaya from Wes Craig. FML number 2, second issue from, why am I drawing a blank? Kelly Sue DeConnick is out this week as well. So there's plenty of fantastic books out this week. Just be sure to get out to your local comic shop and pick something up. So that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. We appreciate you joining us as always, and we'll talk to you next time.
Catch you later.